Hey guys, welcome back to UK Highland Photography. I'm Strober, and today we're going to be talking about more ethics in photography. This is the second video, and today we're going to be concentrating on the South African photographer Kevin Carter. So before I begin, I just want to say this. Kevin's story happened in the 1990s. That to me is just yesterday. The 1990s, it was yesterday. It wasn't that far away. And when you hear Kevin's story, it is quite shocking to believe that this happened only in the 1990s. So let's begin then. So his name is Kevin Carter. He was born on the 13th of September 1960. His nationality, South African, and his occupation, photojournalist. And he also was the winner of a Pulitzer Prize. So what's the background on Kevin? Kevin grew up in South Africa. He grew up during a period known as apartheid. And if you don't know what apartheid is, then basically it was when a white government was treating black citizens of that country very, very badly. So that's what apartheid was. And Kevin, he actually hated the way that this white government was treating black people. As a matter of fact, when Kevin was conscripted into the South African Defence Force, he then defended a black waiter from racial slurs in the mess hall. This resulted in Kevin being beaten up by his fellow comrades. So as we can see, Kevin did not like this so-called apartheid. As a matter of fact, I think that the British government actually excluded South Africa from the British Commonwealth because of the apartheid. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's true. Anyway, moving on. So Kevin goes on to become a photographer. He becomes a photojournalist. And he starts working on an assignment in the 1990s, which is, of course, the Civil War in South Africa. Now, the Civil War was basically, you had three factions, but we're going to concentrate on only two factions. On one side, you had the ANC. The ANC being related to Nelson Mandela. And then on the other side, you had a group called the Inkatha Freedom Party that was supported by Zulus. Now, what happened was Kevin had to document this conflict between the ANC and the Inkatha Freedom Party. And Kevin was exposed to some serious violence, people. Kevin witnessed sincere, horrible violence. The kind of violence that me and you hope we will never have to see in our lifetime. Kevin, let me tell you this first, okay? When Kevin took photographs of some of these acts, of these violent acts, Kevin felt like it was wrong, okay? But then this is what Kevin said. I was appalled at what they were doing, but then people started talking about those pictures. Then I felt that maybe my actions hadn't been at all bad. Being a witness to something this horrible wasn't necessarily such a bad thing to do. So let's get this right. Kevin said even though he was taking these horrible photographs, which he felt were horrible, because people were talking about it, that somehow made Kevin feel like good, and that he wasn't in the wrong for taking these photographs. But let's have a look at some of the examples of what Kevin was exposed to. Kevin was exposed to stuff like neck lacing. Now, neck lacing is basically where a car tire is placed around the victim's neck. is filled with petrol, gasoline, etc., and it's lit, and the person is basically burnt to death. And this is the kind of stuff that Kevin was witnessing. Not only that, but Kevin was witnessing shootings, stabbings, beatings, and any other violent act that's probably led to death. So, because of safety reasons in that time, Kevin then found these 3 other photographers, and he started to work closely with these photographers, and they became known to be called the Bang Bang Club. And the Bang Bang Club became famous for capturing images of violence. So they became totally known for capturing distressing images. As a matter of fact, certain newspapers wouldn't publish certain images from Kevin and his friends because they were that graphic and they were at times that distressing. So, moving on, many people thought that because Kevin would take these kind of photographs, people thought that Kevin could mentally detach himself between him and the subject it was that he was photographing. And a few things came to light with regards to Kevin. It became known that Kevin was a drug user. Kevin used to smoke cannabis, which apparently is known as Dagger within the townships of South Africa. And then the rumour is that Kevin also liked to smoke something called the white pipe. And the white pipe would have been a mixture of cannabis and mandrax. And then there's also the rumour that Kevin snorted cocaine. As a matter of fact, during my research, I've actually discovered that apparently some photographers used to turn over the camera, put out a line of cocaine on the lens, sniff it, clean the lens, and then continue taking photographs. So there has been elements, rumours of drug use being involved with regards to this photojournalism that Kevin Carter was doing. So actually, in the movie, if you've not seen it, there's a movie called The Bang Bang Club. We'll probably talk about the Bang Bang Club in another video, but in the movie Casualty of the Bang Bang Club, Kevin is dismissed from his employer because of his drug addiction. So in the movie claims that Kevin did have a drug problem and he was dismissed by his employer for this drug problem. However, after he left that company, Kevin then in 1993 headed into Sudan. Now, it's not quite clear what his assignment was in Sudan, but what we do know is that Kevin spent a lot of time photographing victims of famine. And it was in Sudan where Kevin photographed his award-winning Pulitzer photograph. And when he went into the village of Ayod, I believe it's Ayod. So when Kevin went into the village of Ayod, Kevin seen a young girl taking a much needed break whilst she was making her way towards a feeding station. And what made this scene more interesting to Kevin was the fact that a vulture was lurking in the background behind this girl. And Kevin admittedly spent 20 minutes photographing this scene, watching the vulture, watching the girl, and photographing this entire scene. Now, what happened was Kevin's photograph then went on to be published in newspapers. And when it was published in the newspapers was getting all these written letters from members of the public asking what happened to the little girl. did the little girl manage to get to the feeding station? Did the photographer help the little girl? And the newspaper replied back to these letters with an editor's note in the following week's newspaper. And it said that the fate of the little girl was unknown both to the newspaper and to the photographer. So Kevin Carter never knew what happened to that little girl. He's got the photographs and somehow he's just moved on. So the only thing what we do know about Kevin, and Kevin has said this is what I found from my research, is that when Kevin was asked about the little girl and if he had tried to help her or offered to help whoever, Kevin said that his main aim for staying for 20 minutes was because he was waiting for the vulture to spread its wings. Okay? But the vulture did not spread its wings. It didn't do that. So Kevin then chased the vulture away and sat under a tree, lit a cigarette, talked to God, and then cried. That's what Kevin Carter said. And then Kevin Carter also said this: people may find it difficult for people to understand, but as a photograph journalist, my instinct was to make the photograph. As soon as that job was done and the child moved on, I felt completely devastated. Now, from this statement, what Kevin has given us, he said the child moved on. So that would tell me that hopefully the child was moving towards the feeding station. But anyway, Kevin had some critics. One critic said this: the man adjusting his lens to take just the right frame of her suffering might just as well be a predator, another vulture on the scene. That, guys, is quite harsh. I'm sure you'd agree with that. That is quite a harsh thing to say. Okay? It has also been noted that even some of Carter's friends questioned Kevin Carter as to why he had not helped the little girl get to the feeding station. Right? Because us guys, we weren't there. We will never know what happened, okay? But there is two very good points why Kevin may not have helped the little girl. And I'm going to give you these 2 points now. The first point being because, one, photographers were apparently warned not to touch victims of the famine in case they were carrying diseases. Okay? So that's number one. Kevin may not have been able to help the little girl in case she was carrying a disease, and that was why he was unable to help. Number two, Kevin at times was surrounded by Sudanese soldiers, men carrying rifles, who perhaps may not have allowed Kevin to have got involved in Sudan's current situation. So even if Kevin did want to help the little girl, then perhaps the soldiers prevented him from wanting to help the little girl. Now, in contrast to what many people believe, Kevin in fact was emotionally connected to the subjects in his photographs. And it's with very sad news that I say this, but Kevin Carter actually did commit suicide, and in his letter he wrote, "I am haunted by the vivid memories of killings and corpses and anger and pain, of starving or wounded children, of trigger-happy madmen, often police, of killer executioners." So again, sadly, Kevin committed suicide. And basically, guys, that is the story of Kevin Carter with regards to one of the biggest ethical decisions he had to make within his career with regards to taking the photograph of the vulture and the little girl. Right guys, thanks for watching the video. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and hopefully in the next video we will be talking about another photographer and an ethical decision he or she may have had to have made. Again guys, catch you all later. Thanks for tuning back in.